Welcome to Cracking Legal Innovation. In this episode of Cracking Legal Innovation, we're joined by Andrei Salajan, Director of Legal Tech and Innovation at Schoenherr, which is a leading firm in Central and Eastern Europe. And also a big welcome to Daniel Porus, who's our Chief Commercial Officer here at Legetics and my co-host for today. Andrei leads the legal tech and strategy implementation at the firm, and that involves everything from procuring technology, optimizing processes, dealing with people, improving efficiencies, thinking about new client services, navigating the rapidly changing world of legal innovation for the firm. I know Andrei from the Legal Geek conferences and other places where he comes bounding across as probably one of the most enthusiastic people in the industry. And I'll certainly be exploring in this podcast where he gets his inspiration and what makes him quite so passionate about the space. We'll also explore what makes an ideal law firm technology provider relationships and how that can develop from even before you've bought a piece of technology through the kind of implementation and adoption phases, and also what it means to be competitive and to differentiate yourself in today's market. Anybody could come and buy the same legal technology. What does it take to stay ahead as a firm? And what is it? Is it technology? Is it people? Is it adoption? Is it model training that makes firms lead the market at the moment? So I'm really looking forward to the podcast, and a really, really big welcome to Andrei.
That's first of all, very kind of introduction. Thanks, Anthony. Yes, I do seem to be quite passionate about the topic. I think it's a mix, like the passion side of things comes from a mix between technology and the people. I think there's really awesome people in legal tech, you guys included, right? And that's how these dynamics, get shaped, at the conference, at whatever event you get talking, right? And it's always the substance of it, right? I always like to talk to people about there's so much things happening and there's so many exciting things happening. And so you're pretty quick with legal tech peers to get into that substance. So I guess that's something that is really fueling that passion. I'm also very passionate about technology per se, right? I started this journey in legal tech. I've been working in law firms back then it wasn't even legal tech. It was more IT or whatever, you were at the crossroads of both worlds, right? But that was like 13 years ago. I mean, back then, it was like no one was really taking that very seriously, right? For me, it was clear that it's an area that will develop and will improve, and it was a huge potential to be in that at that crossroads and build up, all the things that then came later in legal tech. But I think starting from that point is quite humbling to a degree, right? I remember our CEO Gudrun. We were joking when I joined Schoenherr, and back then already legal tech was a bit established. So I joined for a typical legal tech position and to drive legal tech. But still, yes, we knew it's important. We knew it will develop and so on and so forth. But we were joking, and she was saying, like just do it on the side, Andrei. Like do it, in the shadows. We're operating in the shadows. Like don't bother the partners too much. We know it's important. We're supporting this. Management is supporting this, right? But so I think those were the days, right? And everyone that has been doing this for a long time knows that, right? So I think, and it shouldn't sound negative, but I think also for me, the passion comes also from that adversity as well, right? You were doing this before it was popular, before Gen AI was there, before the whole hype thing. And yes, it's a serious topic and we should invest in it and we should look at it. But no one really was dedicating the energy and the time, right? And I think going through that process and being able to meaningfully change something or do something gives you, like, you're either done with it or you're passionate about it and still continuing, I guess. So that's at least my take on that.
Andrei, we've had the pleasure of working together for a few years now, and I know one of the things that the main thing we're going to dive into today is exploring the ideal vendor law firm relationship. So I suppose as a first question to you, from an innovation team's perspective, what does an ideal sort of law firm and technology provider relationship look like?
I think this has massively changed, especially within the last few years, right? So I think this is massively evolving, and I think this is constantly changing. But I was recently actually in a different scenario thinking about this, and I'm not the guy that puts things into, of course, like frameworks and strategy and whatever, but I actually came across the like 3 Ps for this, right? And I'm sure someone else coined this somewhere else or whatever, but I really do think for me, it's about the product, the people, and the partnership, right? And those are a bit the 3 Ps for me. And actually maybe in that order, right? I think if the product really sucks and is not good, right, I think you cannot go far, right? So for me, and being a tech savvy guy and loving technology, for me, it was like the product is first, right? It needs to be a good solution, and it needs to solve a pain point, and all that thing around really trying to actually improve something, right? I think especially now, and talking about the change of relationship, right? I think the pace of how product development is being approached is completely changing as well, right? So my expectations about a good product, or being, as a provider or in that relationship being focused on the product, was completely different 3 years ago than it is now, right? I think now it's completely different pace, right? If we come to the second component, the people, right? I think as soon as you have the prerequisites, right, and you have the product, it's all about the people in terms of how motivated are you? How is the relationship shaped? Do you really believe in your product? Do you understand your product? Do you understand law firms? Are you just pushing, just a business, and are you just focused on sales, right? Or are you really focusing on driving this change and innovation, right? So people and the vision, also quite important for me. And I think that just naturally leads to the partnership, right? And the partnership, I mean, we can talk forever about it, right? But I think for me, it's very simple. I think we're putting the energy in. We want to be in a position where we do give feedback. I think there's the amounts of feedback and involvement from law firms and from the ones, getting the solutions and using the solutions is completely different. And then it becomes a question of, is this feedback and is the relationship, is the partnership really a partnership? Or am I, as a provider, just caring about my top 5 clients in terms of revenue, and they get everything, and they get a bit of a voice, and everyone else is just plays along or gets what they get, right? And stuff like that. And I guess there's a lot of aspects to it, but these 3 components I would say are the main things for me when talking about this.
Are they equally weighted for you, Andrei, or do you feel that one of those 3 components is more important than the others?
I think the product is most important, because I think nothing else works without, yes, you can have great people and fun relationships and so on and so forth, but if the product is bad, you won't really get far, right? So I think, yes, the product. So I think in terms of weight, product to top, number 1. I think then it's about the people that are involved behind the solution and the synergy, and I think the partnership then comes naturally. So by last P, the partnership that basically encompasses everything, for me is something that just is there or not, right? I guess you can sabotage that if you have a really bad approach to it, but I think it's the product, and then the people, and everything else comes along.
Maybe to dive into the partnership piece then. So if we're taking, the product as table stakes, the people behind it that are supporting it, that's super important. But in terms of that partnership piece, what does a good partnership look like? You already talked about, how does someone actually, engage with you as a firm, and not just prioritizing maybe, other customers that they're working with, but maybe diving into that in a little bit more. What does a good partnership look like?
The ideal partnership for me is the one that really keeps you in the loop on everything that's happening on the vision and the product side, right? I think doing that and then getting the right partnership up and running and the right support to then meaningfully drive. And I think, that's on me. I think we will definitely get to that in our discussion, right? We're very hands-on as a legal tech team, right? So a lot of the burden on being successful with something I take on our team and on our organization. Of course, a good partnership and a good provider supports with that, right? But I think it's on us to be successful with a good product and with good people, in a good partnership, right? I think being successful with that, and I think that's where the edge on the partnership level comes for me, is Do we have a partner on the other side that keeps us in the loop of what's happening, reacts to our needs, and where we can then lean out as a legal tech team and together with our legal teams to ultimately provide services to the clients that are completely new or genuine, or risk something or test something new out, right? Instead of going for the good old commodity, the way we always did things, right? And I think for me, a good partnership is someone that has my back on pushing the limits on that boundary, right? I know, okay, if I have some new idea or if I have something new that I want to try out with the new client, right? Of course, I'm not going to ridiculously promise something that's not possible on the technical level, right? But then I will get the support or the backing to do that as well. So
I feel one of the challenges we have, we feel very lucky to have people like you, Andrei, who are so engaged in actually relaying feedback around how the product's being used, imagining with us where the product can go into the future as well. One of the challenges on our side is we have these conversations with very many firms in very many regions all over the world, and some are aligned in terms of the feedback that we get, some are not so aligned, and it then becomes a challenge of managing expectations around what is going to be developed, what isn't. And I know it can be frustrating. It's a delicate balance on the technology vendor side to you're constantly letting people down to a degree. You can't deliver everything all at once. We'd love to do that, but it feels like to a degree having to manage expectations a little bit. How do you see it on your side? Because we're sort of managing that on from our perspective. You're passionate, you want to see more on the product, you're driving it forward. But yeah, how do you see that sort of playing out from the law firm perspective?
I think it's a perfect example for the partnership, right? I think it's transparency, being honest about the vision and being honest about what can be done and what can't be done, right? I mean, it's the same thing in a law firm. I mean, we at Schoenherr pushing innovation for us, right? Across 14 offices and multiple practice groups, right? It's the same thing. It's always a push and pull in terms of who needs what and features and so on and so forth and what do you prioritize, right? So I do like everyone plays that game, and I think yes, it is a challenge, but I think being very transparent and very clear on the vision, I think is key there, and everything else comes along, I guess.
I think there's also a bit of a feeling that the legal tech industry is trying to tackle something together, and certainly with the innovation teams and the software, it feels very much like we're trying to both solve the very same industry-specific problem for us, transaction management, but there's a lot of alignment there, and almost, I guess you've come from sort of managing like really large IT, generic, worldwide vendor type relationships as well. You just don't get that same feeling of like we're in it together and we're trying to tackle the same problems. Do you think there's something that like legal tech is sort of maybe just sufficiently focused or special? Or
in essence, a lot of law firms on the top level, struggle or tackle or do a lot of the same things or very similarly. Of course, you have different jurisdictions, different cultures, different flavors, and so on and so forth, different clients. But ultimately, yes, I think that's quite consistent in terms of at least the direction where everything is going and the main needs and main areas of legal tech, right? I think what I see from my end on that, and that's very exciting and coming maybe back a bit to the passion and the people on that is, I think the legal tech community and the good legal tech leads that I talk to from a lot of other law firms, first of all, they're very open in sharing what everyone is pretty much tackling. Of course, not to a granular level that everyone starts laying all the cards open on the table. But I think everyone is tackling the same things, and everyone is very creative. And very, very open to discussing about trends, about things that might get consolidated and so on and so forth, solutions or similar problems that can be tackled with the same stack and so on and so forth. And I think these patterns you see on our end, you start to see them on your end as well. And I think the whole legal tech scene is revolving around those patterns as well, I think, yeah.
To make it real for people, like, do you have some examples of, I don't know, the good, the bad, the ugly?
Well, look, I think generally, with everything, these relationships and again, the product development and everything is getting more polished and more fast paced, and everything's changing, right? But I did encounter this, and you still encounter it in some solutions, right? That typical, okay, here's the solution, have fun with it. That's the support email, and see you come renewal, right? Then we're all back, all friends again, and we're discussing about renewal plans, right? And it's not even about the per se the proactive support, because again, we're quite hands-on, right? So we manage a lot of stuff ourselves. But if I see a solution not being developed, like not one button changing for, I don't know, like even half a year in our today space, but you would see that previously, like years ago, and you still see it to a degree, in 2 years, nothing happens, nothing changes with a specific solution. Okay, might be more of a workflow, utility thing, and not the main solution, not document automation, not AI, not transaction management, right? Not the big pillars or the big established solutions. But still, that's for me that's a bad example, right? I don't think that works that way anymore. Also, bad examples are when you really, and you see that as well, and I think there's really motivated and really good people in sales in legal tech, right? But you often see, people pushing ideas and solutions that have no clue about the product. So I think you really need to understand the business and the market, right? And I think I think those are bad examples, right? Not having that or seeing that happening is, I think, at this point not acceptable for me anymore, because at the other end you have providers that are really mastering these things, right, and are really completely reshaping. So I think the gap also becomes very very big between these things.
I'm interested, Andrei. We invested very early on as a company in the customer success side to really support the firms and be very hands-on with how we can support in implementations and rollouts and be an extension of the team. But maybe as a starting point, do you think that you can be too hands-on from a vendor perspective?
It's tricky for us because we're very hands-on as a legal tech team. We control quite a lot what happens in terms of, and maybe I must say that openly, probably in some situations we're not even leveraging the full potential of some providers that on the training side and on the thing, because we're again, I did this for a long time now, right? And we know what works and we know what doesn't, and we know how fast you can compromise a project or motivation in a team if you have a bad training session, or if you have a bad, frame the things in the wrong way, or go into the direction with features and with stuff that don't really fit to that specific team, that specific practice group, right? So we've been the hard way we learned, that to be successful in a lot of these areas, you need to be very much involved as a legal tech team, and you need to know your organization and your culture. Vice versa, if you have a legal tech team that doesn't have a clue about what your teams and your practice groups are doing, right? That's also bad. You're in a bad position from the start, right? There, you might have a provider that is very well set up, works with a lot of other law firms, knows what similar practice groups do, and can come in and save the day, because they're like, look guys, with this firm and whatever, we're doing these things, and this might be a fit for you as well. So I'm not saying that's not important. For me personally, and for us at Schoenherr, we've been very hands-on with this. So for me, flexibility is key there, right? If we have an idea, or we have a new setup, or we need material from our providers or whatever, right? I always need to, this needs to happen fast, and they need to adjust to that. But I think we're taking away a lot of the burden on the implementation and training side in the usual relationship. But we're also trying to do it as a collaboration, as a partnership. So I'm not trying to, cut providers off it's always a mix,
I think it's been interesting for us because we've seen different firms take different approaches to implementations and rollouts, and some like to own the process themselves, where they want to run all the trainings. They want to become the product expert. So we run more of the train the trainer approach, and we sit alongside, and we'll have our cadence of how often we're checking in, but it's all owned by the team. And then there are others who, want us to be much more directly doing the training and directly engaging even with the end users and doing that. And, it does seem to be a balance. And I don't know, my personal view is it fundamentally comes down to, well, part of it is culture and how rigid the process is, but fundamentally it's a question of trust in that relationship, and how much the law firm trusts the technology provider to, be mindful of how busy the lawyers are, be mindful of not just, harassing them all the time, being able to, give a good training and a good demo. These are busy lawyers, and how are we going to make sure they're not sitting there wasting, you only get one shot at this, or there's the, the mindset that you only have one shot at, winning over a really important, rainmaking partner or a particular busy team to actually implement the technology. So I'd love your view on that. Like, is it fundamentally down to trust for you, or how much of it is process that you have just set and you do it the same way with, with all your products?
I think you mentioned an important factor that really caught my attention, right? You said some teams want to become the product experts. I think for us, like what I always told my team and what we really, preach, but also practice at Schoenherr is you have to be the product experts, because you're always in some situations where you need to react to something. You pick up an idea, you have to catch on that straight away and build on that and so on and so forth. So I think across our legal tech portfolio, this is a requirement from our legal tech team. You have to be product experts. Yes, I know, and it becomes trickier and trickier and everything's more complex and stuff, but you actually, at least across the super important solutions, right, you have to be proficient in everything, right? A team member of mine that is doing document automation is not just doing document automation, says, oh, AI is not my thing, right? And gets a question about our AI solutions, in a training session, and cannot, react to that, or maybe find even synergies between document automation, AI, and transaction management or whatever, right? So I think you have to have that. That being said, I think, yes, it's a trust thing, and there's obviously really good providers out there that can really do a very good training or a very good workshop and so on and so forth. And I think it would be stupid to not rely on those resources as well. I think, again, coming back to the partnership, I think you need to take the best components from every side, right? Put that together and then build on that. So
yeah, it really does sound like it comes back to that partnership. Like, I know how kind of scary it must feel as well. Like, you're putting your relationship with those partners or that team on the line. And if the provider comes in, I always feel like it's on us to make that the most inspiring thing that happens in their day. They look at that and they go, ooh, like IT training or something like that. And like, well, what does that conjure up for them? And can you make them leave feeling like their working lives going to be transformed? And that also you really speak to the practice area, and you don't sort of put, I don't know, like M&A content in front of a real estate lawyer when it's just not the way they work. So making lawyers like really feel understood, I think, is super important in that context. I mean, we see some law firms, I guess it depends on the size of their teams as well, but you have very much like product owners, and it's like, I'm the legatics owner and I'm the sort of this product owner and this product owner, and you really expect everyone to just almost be more like a generalist legal tech consultant who is just completely fluid with the tools, and it's more about solving the problem than owning a certain tool. Is that correct?
I mean, for us, yes. And I wouldn't say generalist in the sense that, because I think in the individual tools, you get pretty deep into complex, things and workflows and stuff. Because I think also more than ever now, you have synergies between these areas, right? It's not like it was a couple of years ago where you say, okay, transactions management is just that, and you just do that, and that's one solution, and you go and use that, and that's it, right? I see personally, and I think this is the exciting part of things also on the development side, right? That I think I see a lot of ideas floating and so on and so forth. I think there's a lot more synergies between the individual pillars. For us, for example, at Schoenherr, we have document automation and everything that happens with AI around document automation. There's some exciting things happening at the moment. There's one pillar, AI one pillar, and transaction management, workflow, whatever project management is one pillar as well. All those three things are quite critical, I think, and all those three things, I think, are synergizing more and more as we discuss about AI and integrations, APIs, MCP, whatever, so I think that the future agents, the big buzzword that everyone is throwing around, right? So I think the more that happens, the more you need that synergy across multiple solutions, right? I cannot have someone in the team saying, oh, I'm just doing legatics, sorry, I cannot help you with this thing, right? Because often you might get questions that cross these boundaries.
Yeah, I think we rely on our customers for that view as to how their tech stack's going to fit together as well, because I think I'm becoming so aware that maybe it's just legal transaction management sits in a very central place, but I think there's a bit of a call from law firms for vendors to think about how does their tech work in the ecosystem. And I think sometimes you can be a bit blinkered by we're just doing this tech and we're implementing this, and maybe we'll launch another product or buy a company that does a thing and do that product as well. But I think I think we really have to listen to people like you who have more perspective in a way actually than we do as to how is this all fitting together in the market and in a law firm. So I really value that, coming back to that relationship. That's so important from our side as well.
And I think like we're also a bit in uncharted territory in these synergies and how the portfolio and how the whole stack fits together, right? Especially when we talk about AI. So I also don't think anyone has it completely figured out. Oh, everything's consolidating towards this, or oh, this needs to. I mean, it's a lot of new territory.
How do you navigate that? Because I mean, we're navigating that as well. Like, and I'm sitting here thinking internally, we have these trends, right? So you have these like, I don't know, AI chatbots that then connect into everything, or does everything have its own AI, or do you expect, a mix of both? And how does this world work? Do you have a way you think about that and navigate almost like this rapidly changing unknown future?
I mean, obviously impossible, but I think we try to test and be very hands-on with a lot of stuff that is relevant, right? So first of all, I think we try to see what's happening on the technology side and understand that and test that ourselves, right? I think that's how a lot of the ideas and a lot of these thoughts and the vision around integrations and features and so on and so forth comes, right? Then we try, I mentioned that again, we try to be very, very, very much involved and attentive and learn. There's a constant learning process on our side from our legal tech team. How do they operate? How do they work? How is the business changing? Come up with new ideas and new products there. So I think we try to be proactive there as well. And then just a matter of, I think, conversation, right? And taking the time. I mean, you see this all over the place, right? I think if people sit down, a specific practice group or a specific team, and sits down with us and it invests, even a fraction of the time that rightfully so we invest on our client work, right? But invest that time into ideas, the technology, how we can maybe reframe specific things and think about new solutions, right? I think that really exciting and good things come out of that. But I think it's a challenge to find that time. I think historically it was a big challenge to find that time. I think the mindset is massively changing on that. And I think the smart people are starting to understand we need to dedicate and allocate that time. Otherwise, we will have a problem.
I feel one of the other challenges is how do you get the feedback from all the different relevant personas from within a law firm as well? The perspective of the junior attorney, well, the paralegal who's helping out on the deal, the junior attorney, the partner. There's so many people that are involved, in our world anyway, on the transaction management piece. And I feel we probably had a somewhat unique experience early on that, we were very, very hands-on in a lot of these discussions, to the extent that the way we designed customer success to start with, and I think this again comes down to the trusted relationship, but when someone opened up a new deal, like, we were picking up the phone and speaking to the end user, checking, how's your deal going? And normally it was it's great, everything's going fine. But occasionally there would be little things and you get that feedback directly, or something that's really been bothering them. You end up managing to sit down with the partner who was overseeing the deal, and they're not in the weeds. They're not doing it every day, but they're saying, this was great because the client loved it, or it saved the write-offs, or whatever else. But it's all these different personas that you ultimately need the feedback. The junior attorney, the partner, how you maintain that really close relationship on the vendor side, because it's so important to how we, continually develop the product. Increasingly, it ends up being, maybe the catch-ups with people like yourself, Andrei, and you're having those conversations, and it's secondhand, the conversations that we're getting. So
I think that's sadly the way it is. I think you have to hope that you have a good legal tech lead in some of these areas or in the firms, and you have that, and you build that relationship, and you rely, and you get it secondhand. But like me in the first place, getting that insight, is me running around talking to everyone and trying to stay close to the teams and stuff like that. So I think, yes, it is a challenge. I think there's no secret to that. I think it's just time and being open and listening and talking to people and nudging people and constantly selling and promoting new features and promoting new capabilities, success stories, or running around. Doesn't matter what Schoenherr event is. Everyone's always, oh, Andrei, you're coming again and you're selling me some features or some tools. Yes, it's a constant, like, that's the game, right? You need to constantly stay on top of that. You need to explain something 5 times so then it lands, the 6th time. I mean, this is improving a lot at the moment, but that's just the game, right? So I think, yes, in your position, I do relate to that. You have to hope that you have some people in the organizations in these roles that feed you that information and that support you with that feedback.
Are you almost like famous within the firm? Like, does everyone know who you are, and does it take that kind of relationship to gather that amount of feedback, or even get the message out?
I don't know if I would say famous, but I think, yes, I think you need to be a people's person, and I think you need to do a lot of relationship management, and I think you need to be talking to everyone. And of course, I mean, I'm at my limit as well in terms of time, and especially at the moment with so many things happening, right? So of course you need to be mindful not to burn yourself out. But yes, I think you need to be. That's the kind of person you need in these positions, right? And a lot of the legal tech leads, successful legal tech leads, I exchange with, and a lot of them are good friends by now. I think have that quality, right? And all of them are really good speakers, good people persons, really mindful of relationships, able to navigate the politics and the culture and everything of the firms, right? I think that comes with the job, right? So I was doing this. I think we had a LinkedIn post on that, right? But like, what are all the skills that the good legal tech team or member or lead needs to have, right? And it's completely like, it's a mess. You need to do everything, right? You need to be a good salesman. There's so many things, right? So I think it's a lot to tackle, and not everyone's perfect at everything. I'm not either, right? But we really try to focus on all these things at the same time.
I did find it interesting. I think ultimately the best partnerships are where you are an extension of one another's team. You, Andrei, are an extension of our product team. You're there kind of getting the end user feedback and able to relay it back to the relevant people so we can improve our product. You are a salesperson or a customer success lead, you and your team, to the extent that you're having to sell the solution and, win people over and do all of that. And then in turn, we are also an extension of your team, hopefully, as well, where you only have so much bandwidth to be able to produce materials. We're the experts, hopefully, in our product, and particularly the new things that are coming on the horizon and how we can package that up and help you and support you to do that. So I don't know, that's the way I view sort of the partnership and being an extension of one another.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy. I think that's a good partnership. Yeah, where you can rely on the other side to support on these things. Yeah.
In terms of maybe thinking about the different stages of bringing, legal technology solutions into a firm, and these partnerships that we're discussing, the relationships that are developed, they form over a long period of time, and ultimately that starts before you even brought a solution into the firm. So from a pre-sales perspective, what do you look for from a potential, legal provider that are sort of the indicators that it's, going to be a good partnership? Or maybe put product to one side, because obviously you've said product is, an absolute must, but maybe some of those other pieces that you feel are really important from a partnership perspective.
Well, yeah, I think product is really important. I think you need to be able as well to understand the market and what you're doing. If I'm talking with someone about document automation and I tell them, guys, I have DocDrafter and we're doing this and this and that, right? And then the reply is no. Oh, but have you thought, or have you seen this? And shows me something that I know, you need to know that if you can provide an edge or an angle to something that is missing in a portfolio, focus on that, be transparent, right? Do that. Don't try to sell me something that I'm already, covering. And I explicitly tell you I'm covering this very well or we're very happy, or especially on these things, we even developed, extra capabilities and we developed products and we're pushing this to clients and so on and so forth, right? So pick up know where the market is, know where your solution is positioned, right? And know how to frame that and how to really listen to our needs and what we're telling you, as a firm or in-house department or whatever. I think, obviously, we're super hands-on again. So it's, the product needs to be good, but also I want within the first few, I want, give me an access, give me a demo, give me forever never ending slides about some features with some screenshots that are not even the real product screenshots. I think nowadays that's completely gone. Like, just give me a test account and let me play with it. So we're super hands-on in that sense. It sounds quite simple, right? But sometimes you would be surprised how tricky that is. And maybe just one thing to mention as well, like the whole, especially with AI now and with more complex setups and dynamics and stuff like that, where you really understand and get your stuff together on the hosting side of things, security side of things. I mean, for me, to be honest, at this point, these needs to be like 2 slides. Of course, you go in depth when you review all the measures and you review security and review setup and do the contracting side of things. But we're not there yet. But like at the beginning, like to not be able to answer questions on hosting and on connections and stuff like that. I mean, that for me, that's 2 slides and that's covered. And I see this a lot with our clients as well, right? Most of law firms are quite flexible on that in terms of the needs. Obviously, we're very, very careful with compliance, security, and so on and so forth. But we're not like doing DORA checklists and stuff like that, right? And you see then the same provider selling to some of our clients, right? And you're somehow involved in those discussions to a degree. And they're like, we have banks as clients, but we're actually, but we need to review this, on the side or think about this. And I'm like, well, what do you have to think about? If you already have banks as clients, you need to be able to provide, the exact things that our bank, as a client needs in terms of using the solution or getting it themselves, right? So I think these things need to just work, right? And I think it's improving, but yeah.
I feel there's always a little bit of a dance between the law firm and the vendor as well when it comes to, let's say you're assessing a certain type of technology. You've got a few different products that you're assessing. The technology companies are going to have targets they're looking to hit, and they'll be trying to work out how likely is it that this deal is going ahead. You internally are probably balancing how much bandwidth do we have the budget, do we have all of these other things as well. But it can lead sometimes to a tendency for some providers to maybe not get the answers they want, or feel that things are getting delayed, and adopt different tactics to try and drive the deal to close faster. What would be your response, probably having been on the receiving end as a law firm, to those who are trying to drive the deal to close sooner?
Even if we have a short list on really 2 good solutions or whatever, I'm never get into a bidding pricing war and stuff like that, because I don't like that. Obviously, we need to find a sweet spot that works from both sides in terms of budget and starting point and licenses and size of the rollout and so on and so forth, right? So there's always, as you say, a dance on that side. I think there's not too much more to say. I think you get a very good feeling having done this for a while and knowing a lot of people in the industry and so on and so forth. I think you get the feeling straight away of how it is, how would the relationship be, and how is it to work with these providers. And also you hear a lot from the market as well, and so I think that's quite important. And if your gut feeling is no, not working that well, I guess then it's a clear decision. So yeah.
Is that something that people in legal technology should prioritize more, do you think? If you look at a formal RFP process, it'll often have price will be huge, functionality will get sort of bogged down into a big table, and you almost ask every single question apart from well, what was it actually like to work with them during that process, and what was the relationship looking like? And it sounds like you've almost got this whole category of thing that you maybe consider equally or more important than something that is potentially missing from the entire RFP process when firms do take it that way.
I think we're in a very fortunate position at Schoenherr to have a very lean decision structure between our steering committee partners, IT, our legal tech team, and we all talk to each other. If you have silos in these different teams, and if we're talking about huge organizations, right, and you have procurement teams and then there's a different, you have the you have the legal department testing the solution, then handing over to IT and procurement, and they're negotiating and handling that part of the relationship and on the process. I think it's super hard, and I agree with you. And I think like the first question should be like, what's the experience? How is it working with these guys? How is it working with the solution, and so on and so forth, right? So I think that's a big thing. I'm not envying organizations that have these things segregated and don't have a structure or a framework for really good cooperation on the procurement side of things, evaluation. I mean, for me, this starts way earlier, right? And again, not with every solution, and I'm super, I'm always bullish about seeing new stuff and seeing new solutions. I think at some point it's overwhelming and everyone's doing the same thing, and you get like at Legal Tech Talk, I was looking at the floor, right, and looking at how many providers are. It's completely crazy. Like, imagine someone walking into that floor having no clue about legal tech, being appointed new in a position, in a leadership position in legal tech, being like, okay, you need to pick an AI tool, have fun. Like every second vendor is doing AI, right? And everyone cracked it, and everything's perfect and everything's working. And so it's completely crazy, right? I think we're in the fortunate position, in the unique position to be in this game for a long time. We know what's on the market, we know what works. So when I'm going already in a process where I need a new solution in an area and we start testing, right, I pretty much bring in the whole know-how on the relationship side and referrals and experience and stuff already. That's already there, and I already know that to a degree, right? So yeah, I think that can be very tricky.
I'm interested, we've sort of talked about the later stages of implementation, but a really key thing is you've decided on your solution, you've brought it in, you ideally want quick time to value. You want it to be in the hands of the lawyers, being used, being, demonstrating the value. I find more frequently than I would have thought that it can almost be an afterthought once you've actually procured the solution to actually be properly planning out how it's going to be implemented. How do you think about ensuring that quick time to value, and at what stage do you start thinking about the implementation of a solution? Is it pre-sale? Is it at the point of sale? Is it post?
I think we start quite early on. I mean, we're very, very focused on high adoption, and we really try to push on that side. I don't have a magic framework for that. My 10 steps that I start, ticking off early on and planning that. It's a lot of like, depending on the situation, it's a lot of the a bit of gut feeling and experience by now. I think it's also, I'm not a big fan of yes, that's important, and I think there's areas where you definitely need to do that. I'm not a big fan of benchmarking and KPIs and stuff like that if they're not done in a meaningful way, right? And if we look at AI solutions, right, I mean, what's meaningful, right? Is an associate doing 20 prompts to 30 prompts per day, which is actually quite amazing, right? That's only doing translation or is picking up the burden on writing and stuff like that in an international office, maybe not English, not the main speaking language, right? For him, subjectively, right, AI and that tool, like, first of all, he's one of our top users, right? Because you say, okay, like 20 prompts per day, consistently, that's super high, right? And then you say, but that's just translation, right? You can do that with people or whatever, right? Is the license for a sophisticated AI tool, good for him, or is that the right KPI, right? So how do you measure these things, right? And the more you go into, is someone doing a due diligence with an AI tool, that's a whole nother value. Is a partner in a hearing somewhere in litigation arbitration, being able to counter an argument from the opposing party on something where he just has the information in some AI tool, in a vault and stuff like that, and is able to pull that up in real time, right? That's one partner that maybe uses the tool once per month, but that one time was that important hearing on that thing, right? So especially with these, I think the more complex the solutions, the trickier it becomes to measure actual value in the adoption. Obviously, there's a lot of aspects to that, and we constantly monitor usage if we're thinking about our AI tools and stuff, and so our adoption is super high. but we're putting a lot of energy into that, and I think you need to be smart about it. It's not just, okay, we have this framework, we have this goal, we have this target, it's I don't know how many prompts per month per user, bye, we look at the numbers and that's it, right? I think it's not as simple as that.
I find that so interesting because we obviously want to see our product used. We don't want it just to sit there being idle, but what success looks like for different firms can be drastically different. And sometimes, we try to have as many data points as we can, but we don't necessarily have all the same data points that you have on the law firm side. And it might be the case that the product has only been used on a limited number of deals in year one, but they've all been, really big ones. They've added a huge amount of value. You're actually really happy with how things have gone, and that's been done in a structured way to make sure that there is, maybe year one is just done in a really focused way to get the conviction behind it, and then you go on. Whereas, there might be another firm where you're looking purely on the usage basis, and that won't be good enough, and that won't be seen as, a good ROI and continuing on. Ideally, you have that good relationship, where you can have your check-ins and that things are going. Ideally, you have some alignment at the beginning around what is success going to look like, maybe year one and going forward as well. But sometimes I think that, it can be hard to get that alignment between the vendor and the and the law firm.
I agree, and I think it's about the partnership being flexible and adjusting as you go, right? And often, then use cases, new ideas, features come also into play, right? I mean, we were discussing on some features where I told you, I think if we can open up on this, right, I see a lot more simple use cases coming in because, and that's the thing, and you need to be able to adjust to that to a degree. So I think, I think flexibility and dialogue there, and coming back to what you said, that extension of the teams and that kind of relationship where you can rely, even though you're getting the information from a second source, from a secondary source, right? To be able to know you can rely on that and you can act on that, right? And that's meaningful. I think that's important. And I think that's there's no secret framework for that, I guess. And yes, I do agree with you that the success or good adoption is. I'm also constantly being surprised by what people frame as good adoption. In some other jurisdictions, firms, whatever, and it's completely all over the place, right? And I'm thinking, okay, if this would be my adoption, I'm gonna I wouldn't have that tool for a while now in the portfolio. But you also need to be mindful of the organization. It doesn't like setting goals that are unrealistic, right? In driving change and innovation, that's also useless, right? Because that won't get you anywhere either, right? So you need to obviously not throw money out of the window, right? And I think law firms are very good at tackling investment in technology in a very pragmatic way, right? So I think we all have that pressure on value and KPIs, but I think it is just different, and culture plays is also an important factor we shouldn't forget.
Andrei, so we've got a load of legal technology implemented. We've got great relationships with the vendors. I'm curious, looking into the future, especially when all vendors are willing to sell all technology to all law firms, strategically, how you start to think of differentiation for your firm.
Yeah, I think this keeps a lot of people up at night, right? And I think and everyone with that question probably naturally gravitates a bit towards AI. So we might dip a bit into the AI as an example, right? But I think it's applicable to obviously a broader scope, right? I think the thing is, and this might change again. We're a bit in uncharted territory, right? At the moment, we training and own data and firm data and starting to train stuff doesn't make a lot of sense, right? And we see maybe there's some isolated super niche use cases, right? But that was the first thought, right? Oh, okay, we're sitting on all this data, we're gonna train our proprietary stuff, and that will be our edge, right? And that didn't really seem to be applicable so far, right? So I don't think that makes a lot of sense. I do think that once everyone has that baseline, and by baseline I don't just mean the tool stack, but also the understanding what the technology can do, the literacy around how to use it, the training, and so on and so forth, right? I think then again, and that sounds a bit cliche as well, because you hear it in every second panel, right? But it's all about the people, right? But I think it's about the people in a specific way, and I think the first component is really the creativity and being able to think about technology and the stack you have in a toolkit that then allows you to be very creative on features, services, doing things differently for clients. Like really, I think you need to start thinking into products, right? And my product can be a bit of my transaction management tool, some heavy lifting from my AI tool, and some document automation stuff, and to be even able to get to that place, right? We were talking about integrations and solutions, working together and so on and so forth. So I think, yeah, let's get to that place first, and then I think lawyers really need to change how they think about offering their services, and I think they need to get a lot more creative on that, right? And yes, you need to invest the time, and I think thinking outside of the box, trial and error, investing your time really properly into thinking about these things. Like these are all things that go against the mindset and the model so far. So I think that requires quite a bit of a culture shift. But I see everyone willing to do that, and to at least, everyone's talking about it. And I think people are starting to really put in the work to do it. I think that's one component. I think the second thing is, and you hear this a lot in the US, and again more towards the AI stuff. And I was recently listening to a podcast by Ethan Mollick and I think Co-Intelligence or something like that it's called. But you hear this again also from tech leads, unrelated to legal in the US a bit more. I think we're trying to throw AI at the stuff that we already have, right? At workflows that are already in place, at stuff that is already existing, quick wins, and so on and so forth. I think that's good and fine, but I think we also probably need to be a bit more creative, a bit bolder at throwing AI at the big problems, right? And really starting to shape things a bit in a new way, right? And then that won't work, right? Or that won't be perfect, but like take the outcome out of that and iterate on that and so on and so forth. I think especially in the European space, we're very much, there's a lot of good stuff's happening in the US, and a lot of bad stuff, right? So I'm not that big, everything's good in the US, but I think that people are a lot more bold on what, or rethinking workflows, rethinking processes, and how AI can really reshape stuff than we are in our space. And I think also in law firms, we really try to go for that quick win, change an existing workflow, which might be the wrong thing to do in the first place anyways, right? So I think that's also, and there obviously that everyone's using the same thing, everyone has the same prerequisite, but if you're bold on that angle, right, you can achieve some things maybe a lot faster than someone else, just by doing that, right? And it's again the people and the culture and the mindset and approaching things a bit differently. So I think those would be two things that come to mind when thinking about that edge, right? But then again, maybe in half a year everything's different and everyone's fine-tuning their models on some local infrastructure, right? And that's so I don't know, yeah.
I find that absolutely fascinating. I think your comments somewhat reflect a team that's really getting it right and is at the cutting edge. So you're saying, okay, like it really is about the forefront and the creativity of how we put these things together. I mean, we definitely see a lot of the market that's in a much earlier stage, and we started with the the fact we've bought this is amazing, and don't tell anyone we've bought Legetics, and the number of firms that come to us and think it's this kind of like massive secret they've got Legetics, and actually it's going to give them a massive competitive advantage. That was definitely one wave. I think you still get stuck with loads of firms who have bought all the technology or have the technology available to their lawyers, but just haven't succeeded nearly as much as you have on that rollout and usage and mindset shift phase. So I think the biggest differentiator I see is definitely whether people are even using it at all. But I think your I think you've got like fantastic usage. It sounds like of a lot of pieces, and then it's like, how do you take that mindset and you push it even further and create new things or tackle big problems or deliver client services in new ways?
It's weird, right? Because on one hand, like I think there's no magic shortcuts to culture, mindset, adoption, implementation, stuff like that. As you say, it's a journey, it's a process. I can even now with everything that's happening in AI, I think you cannot skip that completely. Like again, no silver bullet magic. I think yes, you can speed it up in some areas, but still nothing wild there. I think on the other hand, there has never been an easier time to catch up, right? In terms of solutions and how easy it is to introduce stuff and cloud. I remember we were having big debates about cloud is bad. I mean, like, yeah, and we were looking at on-prem stuff and stuff. I mean, those times are like, that's completely gone, right? So although we're now talking again about sovereign stuff, but I think in a different framing. But that's the thing. I think it has never been easier to prototype, develop, and to catch up, right? On the other hand, everyone seems to be inclined to say, okay, so now we can take this magic shortcut and then get stuck on the mindset process change part, right? So yeah, those things are a bit tricky at the moment, or a bit conflicting.
Andrei, it's been an absolutely fascinating discussion. We've covered so much ground, I think, starting with the enthusiasm of the innovation lead, bringing that to the vendor relationship. Something that struck me is that your line that everyone should be a product expert, and that actually this is a job that's really, really hard to do, because you need that human side, you need that relationship side, and you're asking everybody to be a product expert. But that sounds like when you really do get that right, you can get to a place where you have brilliant relationships with your vendors, you have brilliant relationships in the firm. When you mix that with that product expertise, you can actually use the technology that's out there that might be the same technology that everyone else has built, but to build some really creative things that are delivering brilliant results for clients in potentially pretty creative ways. So it's always an absolute pleasure talking to you. I look forward to our next enthusiastic conversation at Legal Geek or the next legal technology conference that we meet at, and it's always a pleasure working together. I look forward to our meeting later this week, where you help shape how we fit into the rest of your tech stack with our CPO as well. It's an absolute pleasure working together, and I'd like to thank you very much for appearing on our podcast.
Thanks, Andrei.
Thank you. It's been a blast. Thanks for inviting me, and yeah, as always, it's not easy. We keep on pushing.